Although this Libya update will be about the Eurocorps concept of for a Euro Africa Corps, and also the humanitarian intervention by NATO in Libya. As I said barely a week ago to Minu 1999, I had the idea for a Euro Africa Corps, which would solve the problems of the Middle East and North Africa, and Central Africa, and eventually the entire African continent. But Richard Dalton, in a debate on France 24, and Richard Dalton was the ambassador to Libya and an expert on Libya, who works for Chatham House, an advisory and independent think tank to the British government, that the best way to help Mistrata would be to put in a military hospital, which would necessarily be needed to be protected by infantrymen. Now, this is again another sign of the subtle hyperpower nature of the European Union, because the best way that we can intervene, although the Europeans are considering sending a mechanised brigade from their rapid reaction force to Libya, if the UN says that they can, will be to help the rebels with humanitarian supplies, military hospitals, arms dumps, advisors, and also to provide them with weapons and advisors that can bolster them up and give them force protection. Now, another professor on the debate on France 24 said that we may have to consider a negotiated peace with Gaddafi, although Gaddafi is very vindictive and he has shown in the past his support for international terrorism. Now, a Gaddafi holding the centre of Libya and the west would not appeal to me. He had a very advanced nuclear weapons program and chemical program. He gave weapons to the IRA, and also infamously destroyed a French airliner, and also more infamously destroyed Pan Am airliners over Lockerbie, which killed more British citizens than anyone else, even more than the 9/11 attacks, which were caused by the Bin Laden Saudi crime family. Now, this brings me on to the subject of the different actors that are going on in Libya. There is NATO and the European Union, the US, as one actor, and the Gaddafi as another, and the rebels, the democratic rebels, as another. But there is a fourth actor, and the fourth actor is, as Noel Ferguson alluded to, and also the Americans naively may have let in the back door, is the Saudi crime family, which the Americans wanted to supply and arm and advise the democratic rebels. This to me seems an insane policy, and it is in line with the insane policy of supporting Saudi Arabia that led to 9/11. Because the Saudis are gaining from American arms, weapons and advisors to prosecute a war through their proxy, the Bin Ladens, against the United States. Now, we don't want these people into Libya in a delicate situation, because the various tribes in it, the two main tribes in Libya, although Libya is a very homogeneous society, are in the prospects of wavering between Gaddafi and the democratic rebels. The democratic rebels' credentials for being democratic are impeccable. They have nothing. Noel Ferguson was wrong in saying that they were a bunch of jihadists, but the threat from the Al Qaeda in the Maghreb, the Bin Laden crime family, and the Saudis is real. That they could get into Libya if there is a de facto stalemate between the democratic rebels and Gaddafi fighting themselves into a standstill, and if NATO gets war fatigue and leaves. Now, Rory Stewart said after Iraq that we have four main fears, and two. He is a Conservative MP and was a governor of an Iraqi province during the Second Gulf War. Now, he said that we have four main fears and two main concerns and responsibilities. That is, the first responsibility is to protect British citizens, and this includes the armed forces, from harm, because Gaddafi is a very vindictive man. He has that record of supporting international terrorism, and he said that he will take revenge on the people who have turned against him. Now, the other problem is the legacy of Iraq. The legacy of Iraq means that there, as I said in my legal basis for killing Gaddafi video, that there is a precedent set because of Iraq too, that there is a right to protect, for the international community to protect the citizens of a state from harm from that state, as we are doing in Libya. I'm not naive. There may be other motivations as well, including oil, because BP has invested heavily in Libya, billions of pounds. But that in the legal terms, that is correct, what Rory Stewart was saying. The other four fears is that there could be a rogue state in Libya, which Gaddafi represents, and that's the reason why we're intervening. That there could be a failed state in Libya, which Gaddafi could represent, but Somalia represents even better as an example. But Libya could become a failed state. That is the fear. The third fear is that we need to intervene, and we need a deep intervention and occupation. But that leads to the fourth fear, which would be a legitimacy deficit, which Niall Ferguson spoke about in the context of the United States, but could mean the same thing for the Europeans and the West in general. That if we have an occupation of Libya, we could lose credibility if we fail, and if we do succeed militarily, we could still be blamed by people in the Muslim radical groups for trampling on Muslim land again, as happened in Iraq. But as I said, Iraq changed the entire ball game there, and I was not sure whether I was pro or against the war. I had reservations. But Bush certainly did change the game in the Middle East. And it's changed, as Jack Straw said, has changed the whole ball game, because the democratic revolutions have caused the Palestinians to reevaluate becoming a state without a peace treaty from Israel, which would mean that Israel was occupying a sovereign state and a sovereign democratic state, arguably, for the Palestinians, Fatah movement. It's also unsettled the Ba'athist regime in Syria, and is causing everyone to look at Egypt and Tunisia, and Egypt especially, and seeing what's going on there with the democratic revolution there. This is what sparked this off, as well as what Niall Ferguson said about food and fuel prices. As Minoon said, oil is almost cheaper than water in Libya, so that might not be the reason for the democratic revolution in Libya. These people are not being fueled by bread, they're being fueled by the concept of liberty and equality and freedom from Gaddafi's oppression, in my view. Now, there isn't long left, so what can we do? We must bolster the rebels and undermine Gaddafi through a humanitarian massive intervention to build up the rebels, as we did over time, as we did in Gulf War One, by building bases in the east of Libya and conducting a massive air war and bringing in troops gradually to build up a massive force, maybe several divisions, so that victory is certain and the Europeans and rebels can march to Tripoli.